Let's talk about the power of showing up. And I think I have the perfect example for this. Think about a sunrise. Sunrise doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't arrive with some dramatic announcements. It just rises every single day. Some mornings the sky is brilliant, other mornings it's hidden behind the clouds. But whether you see it or not, the sun still shows up. Because it keeps showing up, life continues. Plants grow, seasons change, the world moves forward. I think consistency works much the same way. We often imagine meaningful change coming through this one big, extraordinary effort, one perfect week, one burst of motivation, or one day where everything finally just clicks. But that's hardly ever the way life changes. Life changes because ordinary actions are repeated long enough to matter. And that's why consistency isn't about doing everything, it's about continuing to do what matters. The goal isn't to impress yourself today, the goal is to make tomorrow more likely. Because every time you show up, you make it easier to show up again. And then that's how momentum begins. Not with one big extraordinary effort, but with ordinary faithfulness repeated one day at a time. Now, here's something I've noticed. People often admire consistency as if it's a personality trait. They think, like, this person is just naturally disciplined. And I don't think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing the result of someone who decided just to keep showing up. They show up again and again and again. Long after the excitement disappears, they keep showing up. Think about learning to play an instrument. I've tried this before. And I lacked the commitment because I couldn't keep showing up. I was trying to learn how to play a guitar, and these fingers, it was pretty bad. But no one becomes a magician because of one super extraordinary practice session. It just doesn't happen. They become a magician because they return to the instrument again tomorrow, and then they come back to it the next day, and then the day after that, and then the repetition is what creates the transformation. I think life works the same way. I've come to believe that consistency is less about doing something perfectly and more about just refusing to disappear. Some days you'll have an hour, some days you'll have 10 minutes, some days you only have enough energy for one small step. And just take it. Because showing up in a small way is still showing up. And showing up is what protects momentum. If I were to try to learn to play a guitar again today, it'd be like starting all over again. There is zero momentum because I stopped showing up. I basically quit on it. I guess it wasn't that important to me. But I think that's why we misunderstand progress. We celebrate the breakthroughs, you know, but life is usually changed by routines. It's the workout that nobody gave you praise for. It's the page that no one knows you read. It's the quiet prayer, the thoughtful conversation, the decision to begin even when the beginning feels insignificant. And those moments rarely feel important while they're happening, but they compound. They compound over time. And that's the remarkable thing about consistency. One day, it rarely changes your life, but 1,000 ordinary days often do. And I've also realized that consistency builds something motivation never can. It builds trust, not just trust from other people, but trust in yourself. Like if I were to compare trying to learn how to play a guitar with learning how to produce content on YouTube, I'd see a big difference. I didn't trust myself when I was learning to play a guitar. I lost trust in myself because I stopped showing up and I couldn't count on myself to show up. But on YouTube, I find myself creating content that very few people even see. But I show up anyway because I guess I care enough about that and I trust myself. Every day you show up, you quietly prove something. You prove to yourself, you say, I'm becoming someone who can be counted on. And that evidence matters because tomorrow, when you don't feel like showing up, you won't be relying on hope. You'll be relying on a pattern that you've already built. And that's why consistency becomes easier over time. It's not because the work changes, it's because you change. Every day that you continue, you're reinforcing an identity. It's the identity of someone who keeps showing up. And that identity becomes one of the strongest forces in your life. It's a lot stronger than today's emotions. It's stronger than today's circumstances. And that's because consistency quietly transforms repetition into character. And there's another misconception about consistency. People often believe that consistency means never missing a day. And I don't believe that. I think consistency means never giving up on the next one. There's a difference between that. Giving up on today or missing today, but realizing that you'll be there tomorrow. I mean, imagine the sunrise again. Some mornings you got these thick clouds that just hide it from view. And from where you're standing, it might seem as though the sun never really appeared. But the clouds didn't stop the sunrise. They only changed your ability to see it. And life has cloudy days too. Days when progress feels invisible, days when you're tired, when you're distracted, days when you're discouraged, days when your best doesn't look as good as yesterday's best. And those days don't erase your consistency. The only thing that can erase your consistency is when you quit. And that's why I stopped asking, did I have a perfect day? And I started asking, did I return? Because returning is what protects momentum. Missing one workout doesn't define you. If you refuse to come back to the gym, that might. One difficult day doesn't undo months of faithfulness. But walking away from what matters, that's what undoes it. You know, I've also noticed that people who build remarkable lives, they don't make every day extraordinary. They make regular days count. They'll write one page, they'll read one chapter, they'll take one walk, they'll have one meaningful conversation, they'll practice one important habit. None of those actions seem impressive by themselves. But together, all of these things become a life. And that's the hidden power of consistency. Small actions stop being small when they're repeated. I think that's worth saying again. Small actions stop being small when they're repeated. And the sun teaches us this every morning. It doesn't try to prove anything, it just appears again and again and again. And because it does that, the world slowly changes. And your life works the same way. When you show up over and over again, your world will slowly change. You don't need to create dramatic progress every day. You simply need to keep giving your future something to build on, a foundation. One more repetition, one more return, one more ordinary act of faithfulness. One reason for that is because consistency isn't measured by never falling behind. It's measured by how faithfully you keep coming back. And every time you do, you become someone, or you're becoming someone whose future is built on momentum instead of motivation. So, what does showing up actually look like? It looks a lot less dramatic than most people imagine. It isn't waiting for the perfect mood or the perfect schedule or the perfect amount of time. It's just asking one simple question: what's the next faithful step? Sometimes that step is big, but most of the time It isn't. Most days it's reading that one page or writing that one paragraph or taking that one walk or making one healthy choice or keeping one promise. Those actions don't seem life changing by themselves, and really they aren't. But consistency has a way of multiplying ordinary actions over time. That's why I stopped trying to win every day. Instead, I just try to avoid disappearing. Because the greatest enemy of consistency isn't slow progress, it's a long absence. And every day you come back, you keep the habit alive. You keep the momentum alive. You keep the identity alive. And I found another practice that quietly transformed the way I think about difficult days. When I know I can't give my best, I still give something. And that's not because a few minutes will change everything. It's because I want tomorrow to feel natural. Remember, the goal isn't to impress yourself today. The goal is to make tomorrow more likely. That's today's daily focus. Choose one meaningful habit. Show up for it today. Even if you only have 5 intentional minutes. And that's not because 5 minutes will transform your life. It's because 5 minutes keeps the rhythm alive. And rhythms, repeated faithfully, become remarkable lives. Think back to the sunrise. It never asks, will today matter? It just rises again and again. Some mornings, no one even notices. Some mornings, clouds hide it completely. It rises anyway. Your consistency should work the same way. Don't perform for applause or praise. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Just keep showing up. Because every ordinary day that you come back, you're strengthening something much bigger than today's results. You're strengthening tomorrow's momentum. And momentum has a remarkable way of making difficult things feel natural. So tomorrow, don't ask yourself whether you feel inspired or not. Ask yourself whether you're going to show up. And then take the next faithful step. Now, however small it may be, take it. Because extraordinary lives are almost never built through extraordinary days. They're built through ordinary days that were honored consistently. One sunrise, one habit, one return at a time. And remember, extraordinary lives are usually built by ordinary people who simply kept showing up. I'll say that again. Extraordinary lives are usually built by ordinary people who just keep showing up. Imagine yourself 1 year from now. And not because you discovered some secret to success. And not because you suddenly became super talented. But because you just refused to stop showing up. Think about what would change. One page each day becomes a book. One workout at a time becomes a healthier body. One meaningful conversation at a time becomes a stronger relationship. One faithful decision after another becomes a completely different life. That's the quiet miracle of consistency. It turns ordinary moments into extraordinary outcomes. And it's not because any single day changed everything. It's because every day quietly builds upon the one that came before it. And think about the journey we've taken so far. You found clarity, you made a commitment, you became someone who honored that commitment, and now you've taken the next step. You've learned to show up again and again and again. That's the beginning of momentum. Not dramatic effort, but repeated effort. Because momentum isn't something you chase, it's something that you create. One faithful return at a time. That's why consistency is one of the greatest gifts that you can give your future self. It reduces the need for constant motivation. It replaces emotional highs with dependable rhythms. It quietly transforms difficult habits into natural ones. And then eventually, showing up stops feeling like something you force yourself to do. It becomes part of who you are. So tomorrow morning, don't ask whether today will be extraordinary. Just ask whether you're going to show up. Then you take one faithful step, or you protect one meaningful habit, or you keep one promise to your future self. And you do that because you're going to be like the sun. The sunrise never worries about changing the whole world in one morning. It just rises. And because it keeps rising, life continues. Your consistency works the exact same way. Every ordinary day that you choose to return, you're creating momentum. And every ordinary habit that you refuse to abandon, you're building the future. And then one day you're going to look back and you're going to realize that the remarkable life that you hope for wasn't built by just a handful of these big extraordinary moments. It was built by thousands of ordinary mornings when you quietly decided to just show up anyway. That's how consistency becomes momentum. That's how momentum becomes transformation. And that's how intentional lives are built. Today's daily focus: choose one meaningful habit and show up for it today. Even if you only have a few intentional minutes, and protect that rhythm, protect the momentum. Then come back tomorrow and do it again. And I'll leave you with a memorable principle. Extraordinary lives are usually built by ordinary people who just kept showing up.